Welcome back to another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo, co-founder and CEO of subject.com, subject.ai. You know where to find us here. We got the subject.ai swag on today. Check it out. We'll have some merch coming your way. But we're super excited. We have a very special guest on today. We've been having an incredible theme of going around the country to some of the best baseball programs that combine academics and athletics that allow you to pursue professional baseball and a great degree at the same time. Here today, we have the true artist and master on how can we actually go pro in baseball, a professional baseball agent, Mark Leinweaver. We're so excited to have you on the show today and can't wait to dive in some incredible discussion. Thank you for joining us today.
Mike, it's a pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
So you've worked with over 75 professional baseball players. You've been in deals with over 30, MLB clubs. Why? Why do you want to do this work? Why is this appeal to you? Why did you choose this path?
Well, I was really looking to be a broadcaster. Truth be told, my story is very untraditional, unconventional. Was a broadcaster chasing the dream in the minor leagues for about a decade, pivoted away from it to be an agent, started at the bottom, literally right up the street here because we're in Beverly Hills today, I know. And it led to something where I realized I had maybe more of a skill set working with professional athletes, coaches, families than necessarily calling games on TV or radio. Plus, I wasn't as good as Burkhart. I wasn't as good as Tom McCarthy. All the guys that were in the minor leagues, when I was there, I saw how great they were. I was good. But could I use the skill set? Could I use the gift of gab? Could I use my passion for baseball, combine it, intersect it? And 17 years later, I'm not only an agent, to really answer to the question, that's how and why I chose it. But I also realized about 10 years ago there was more. Because even players who played and their children that are now going to go through the process, they just weren't as good as dad. They wanted to play at the next level. It might not have been in the pros. It might not have been at D1. But I had a responsibility of also assisting them as well. And that's where it more or less all intersected.
I love that. So what do you need to do to be an agent? Like what are the qualifications that you needed to be able to get to where you are today?
I think it's the number one question that I get asked by any college student. And I take a lot of pride in stepping away from the day job and volunteering and speaking at schools all over the country, namely here in Los Angeles. And I think the number one thing is trust. It's honesty, it's trust. It could be a slick industry, right? And you see it. You see it across sports. It could be a slick industry. Understanding fundamentally that it starts with trust. You're not going to get very far. You're not going to represent many people if they can't trust you. And I think that's being yourself. I tell every young adult, you got to focus on what you do well. Quick story. When I was a senior in high school, when I was in 8th grade in Yorktown Heights, New York, and I was in middle school in 8th grade, and you get to vote on all of those silly awards that came out at the end of the year. I won the same one twice, the superlative that ended up in the yearbook. I won most talkative. And I got kicked out of class and sent down to the principal's office all the time for talking, but at least I knew I was always the best at it. And I didn't have the best GPA. I was a decent player. I wasn't involved in all these clubs, extracurriculars, but I could talk. And I knew that was my ability. And I'd like to think 30 years later, I'm still using that ability to make a living. I try to stress to these students that it starts with trust, but it starts with that ability. And it's about the story that you write. It's the way you want to do it. Be open-minded, listen, but don't do it the way someone tells you to do it. Your unique formula for success is going to be your own. And so I think when you can combine that, whether it's on the field, off the field, whether you want to play the sport, whether you want to work in the sport, I think that's that combination. And it's something that I've taken great pride in the last 10 years of. You start to self-reflect as to where you are in your career. How did you get there? Who are the people that helped you there? And then what's the use of having all this information if you're not paying forward and giving it back to someone else? And so I'm not so sure if I answered the question directly, but it's more about the overarching conversation of what are we doing with this and how can you help that next generation on or off the field?
Do you happen to know what your high school GPA was?
2.8.
2.8. Okay. And so talk about how you said it so eloquently. It's all about doubling and tripling down on your strengths. I think so many people try to spend time improving their weaknesses rather than catering towards their strengths. You knew you had an ability to talk. You're incredible. You're so articulate. I love being able to listen. You have a great voice. How did you be able to work on that skill despite the school system telling you you're not necessarily the greatest student in the world?
Yeah, I think that first off, in addition to that ability, I think every student, and regardless of age, you could be in 3rd grade or you could be in the 3rd year of your college program of whatever you're going to major in. Inherently with that ability comes courage and confidence. I think everyone's got courage inside them because courage is just simply taking a chance. And for some students, it's just walking through the door every day. But if you've got an ability, you always have some swagger with it, and that inherently has confidence, right? So I think it's like a fundamental building block, making sure that you focus on those three. There's always going to be haters and shamers. So I
Always.
think with this younger this younger generation is, and understandably so, fearful of what the other person has to say. You and I did not grow up in the phone era. We just didn't.
That's for the haters. Yeah, how do you deal with haters?
But focusing on the courage, the confidence, and the ability. You look at it for if you could start to master that at a younger age, the more successful and talented you are, the more haters and shamers that are going to come out of the woodwork.
It's so true.
So you use that at that middle school, high school, college level so that it just becomes easier. In fact, I used it more or less as fuel to the fire. So kind of getting back to the answer, well, I wasn't the most academically polished, and that included in college. I'm the only agent at my firm that doesn't have a law degree. I don't even have a master's degree.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about that. Why? So, do you need a law degree with most agencies, or how does that work?
I should probably finish the thought to
Yeah,
say
go for it.
every other agent at our firm has a law degree.
Why?
So, because I think it is fairly required to negotiate the contracts. And when people hear contracts, they think it's the, hey, let's do 15 a year times 4 year. It's a $60 million deal. It's reviewing a 76-page lease in New York for the player who's going to be there for 5 months, that leasing agent and company is going to slip in some tiny little red print that if you don't cancel the lease 60 days before it's supposed to expire, it's going to trigger to 12 months, and now your client's going to be on the hook for tens of thousands. That gets you fired. That is why you have the law degree, or at least in-house lawyers, in my opinion. My skill set, the ability to go around the country and get things done, and I say that it's not get players. They ask for Taylor Swift tickets. They need their car shipped. They're going to need to find that apartment.
you
That's
do
not
all
their
that?
job, all of it.
Yeah.
And when I say we,
Well, no,
that's what
so
agents
what's the
do.
difference between an agent and a manager?
Well, the truth is in sports, there are no managers, right? It's all
Why?
agents. I just think that probably in the shadows here of Hollywood, they chose to have agent manager. Now, the truth is, I would consider myself more of a manager than an agent. I think agents are the ones that cut the deals. Okay. And generally, those are the on the field deals. Those are the endorsement deals. I don't even want to go down the rabbit hole of NIL, but now that's become something where
true.
deals and money are very prevalent. It's at the
Who's your
forefront.
youngest client, or age-wise?
We are now having players commit in 8th or 9th grade.
Wow,
And that's not just
really?
us.
Okay.
That's every agency. That's major college programs, which is when we get down the, hey, you'll know if you're D1. You'll know if you're D1 if they're speaking to you in 8th or 9th grade, in my opinion. But where I'm a little concerned when you talk about what an agent does versus a manager is, yeah, the agent's going to negotiate the deals. And that's their job. And that's what they do well. I mean, that's why you take 5% in baseball, and maybe in other sports, it's a bit more, a bit less. In entertainment, it could be 10, 15, 20%. I deal with coaches. I deal with broadcasters post-playing, where those percentages do go up a little bit. But the bottom line is, to all of it, you have to have a team. And while even though in sports we don't call it a manager, somebody has to manage the day-to-day. And players wake up, they think of something, they're going to call and text you. And it's not just the player. It's the mom, the dad, the brother, the sister, the girlfriend, the fiance, the wife. You've got to be available for everyone all the time. And so I've always considered myself more of the role of the agent, sans the law degree, where all of the people at our firm can go negotiate the contract. I might be the one that's assisting, or possibly even the lead person bringing the package together so that there is a contract to sign, if that makes sense. So it's a pretty busy 24/7, 365 nonstop job. But admittedly, when I referenced the going back a few years, I saw the landscape of who could make it. And that is remarkably a small percentage of, we'll say, the athletic playing
Tiny.
world and capacity. But that shouldn't serve as a disadvantage to others, because I think there's an opportunity for everyone to play. And at the end of the day, if you want to play in the pros, talent plays. Bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. In today's world, they will find you. It's not like when you and I were making VHS cassettes and putting them in a package and hope that they got opened. Literally anywhere in the country, arguably the world, you could be discovered. And I've seen more players in the last few years transfer down from D1 to D3s because you can't get drafted if you're not on the field.
That's fair.
You go play D3, you go show up, you stud
Are there a
out,
few kids
you're going to
drafted
get
D3
drafted.
this year?
I
I
think
mean, Caleb Durbin, the guy from Wash U in St. Louis who was on the Brewers and now on the Red Sox, I was blown away that like he's a starter in MLB and he didn't even go D1.
I'm pretty certain that Mason Miller, the best closer in the
He
game right
started
now,
D3.
is
He did.
D3, right? So
Yeah.
the bottom line is you've got to play.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to go down
Okay,
too
Mike,
many
no,
rabbit
this is
holes.
actually super valuable to our listeners here. We talk about a lot. I mean, my content is all about education first,
Sure.
and I'm very passionate about that. And we say it's better to go to a great D3 academic school than a low-end academic D1 school. Like, what's your thoughts on that? How you approach the college process and be able to prioritize getting on the field? I love your approach.
Well, I'll also say to that, my approach or my suggestion mirrors still the D1 model. I'll give you a great example. Sure, education absolutely matters. But I also think, how big is the classroom?
Yeah.
How far is it from home? What are the majors and the minors? What are the extracurriculars that are going to matter? If I know I'm going to go play, regardless of sport, if I like skiing and snowboarding, I'm probably not better suited for the Southeast
Yeah.
or vice versa. If I hate the cold, then why am I going to a school in upstate New York?
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough time.
D1 included, right? So I do think the extracurricular component is oftentimes overlooked. But fundamentally, there is a huge difference playing Division One at Marist in Poughkeepsie, New York, and Mississippi. Right?
Very
It's a
big
huge difference, but they're both D1,
Yeah.
and they're both going to pay you to be there. And you're going to get exposed because you're at a D1 program, so they're going to have scouts and otherwise come through and get eyes on you. But the opportunity to play and the comfort of the environment and the chance to thrive on and off the field between the ages of 18 and 22 or 23 now could be that fundamental development of prepping you to what's next in life, either on a field or off it, as a pro or as a not in pro, right? I think that for me, when you, yes, education absolutely matters, but I think it's sometimes the non-book education that we are absolutely literally ignoring. And that could even be at the
No, I
D1
think
level
the
because it's all about the sweatshirt and saying, hey, we're here there, or here now, rather.
Oh, they
So,
teach you a ton. I wanted to double click on something you said there, talking about Marist, which I think is a great example. Are they in the MAC or what conference are they in?
are any of these schools in any conference now?
Good point.
Now, I'm
Well,
pretty certain it's the MAC spelled MAAC
yeah.
with the Siennas and those kind of New
had
York-based
6 kids,
schools.
which very proud of at Cary, Illinois. We had 6 kids in my grade go D1, but a couple of them went to the MAC. My best friend went to the MAC. He played in Niagara, and we talk about objectively, there's a big difference in D1 conferences. Can you talk about as an agent how you view them? Like, how big of a difference is there between the SEC and the MAC, or the SEC and the Horizon League? Like, where are the tiers in D1 baseball right now? Like, what's the top tier?
And I should preface this by saying that for me as an agent, I predominantly focus on the pro players, and that my colleagues are the ones running around the country
Also,
on
you
the
don't have
amateur
to
side.
scout and get the top
I,
of funnel going?
I'm involved in the process, but I'm not the one that will necessarily go to the showcases or go to
Yeah.
the events. I'm not the one who's going to necessarily speak to the high school or the college families. I'll be a part of the process, and I've been a part of what I just described, but I'm generally, when they sign and choose to turn pro, that's when I really
Cool.
start to deal with them. But I'm versed enough to say the SEC, the ACC, I would even argue the Big 12, right? Those
What about the
major
Big Ten now? It's
conferences.
USC, UCLA, and
Well,
stuff? That helped a lot?
The Big Ten helped, but UCLA and USC, I
Washington,
think,
Oregon?
Washington, Stanford, those kinds of schools on the West Coast, I think they've had a challenging time travel alone,
It's so
trying
brutal.
to
I feel
navigate
terrible
through
for
this
those kids
circus.
academically. Like, if you're flying from Eugene, Oregon, out to Maryland to play the Terps, or out to New Brunswick, New Jersey to play Rutgers, I think that's pretty tough on the kids.
If you're from Southern California and used to playing an environment like this, weather like this, and now you've got to go play a 3-game series at Ohio State or Michigan State or Rutgers or Michigan, that's a tough adjustment.
Yeah.
But to answer the question, the SEC, it seems like most young players, most of the commits are going that direction, right? The SEC is just a complete powerhouse. I do think that the world of NIL has maybe moved the needle a little bit, where we saw Vanderbilt dominate for many years.
Yeah, they're not doing
LSU's
as
always
well,
been,
yeah.
because maybe who has the funding? Maybe
Yeah.
some schools fundamentally, and I'm not speaking at all specifically to those universities, but some sometimes have more funding than others. Schools that were generally toward the bottom tier get an influx of a donor, and now they could go out and possibly woo that player that otherwise would have chose a different school. And in baseball, You get 9 on the field, and you could have a couple of power pitchers and a couple of bats in the middle of the lineup. You don't have to win consistently through the regular season. You got to win enough games to get yourself into that regional. It's just like you see it now in the big leagues. The team that's hot at the end of September, who might go in as the last wild card, has a really good chance of winning the World Series. I don't think it's a whole lot different now in the college level because the parity in, we'll say, the SEC or those power conferences is so strong, right? There's so many good players, so many good teams that that's where I think you're seeing most of America go, most of the American players go, to the point where, and I don't know this statistically, but how many players in the last 18 to 24 to 36 months have gone from being top 2 round picks to the big leagues? It is a stop in the minor leagues
Yeah, I
to
like
where
it
Major
better,
League
it's more
Baseball is
fun.
contracting the minor league levels
It's good.
because they don't need them as
How do you
much.
feel about it? I love it personally. I'm not a huge fan of the minor leagues. I apologize if you are, but
I'm a huge minor league baseball
okay, we got
fan,
a
but
debate here.
hang on, more so from the element of the family affordable entertainment, the ability
What about the
for
Savannah Bananas?
that's a totally different animal, and I like that they are doing what they're doing, but I think I'm more gravitated toward when that minor league level got cut because Major League Baseball, who bought the minor league, said, "Hey, look, the players are so good coming out of these top programs, the SECs of the world, the ACCs, et cetera, those conferences we mentioned. They're more major league ready than they ever have been. We can get them to the big leagues with a quick stop in AA or AAA, and then they're not only getting up, they're staying up."
Yeah, it's good.
I always feel for some of the towns that historically had minor league baseball and that connection to either an affiliate or just the charm of the game. As long as they're being replaced with the
Summer ball.
college development program, maybe an independent league, I don't think fans know that big of a difference between this was the affiliate of the
Yeah.
Florida Marlins or otherwise. That's the part that I love about the minor
I love
leagues.
that. I
Just
like the empathy there.
baseball throughout the country and that the fans have a chance to go see the game really close versus the alternative where they might be literally states away, thousands of miles away from the nearest major league ball.
No, that's fair, and I do love that, and we love going to small towns throughout the country for the work that we do, and so I definitely appreciate that empathy.
It's the charm.
Where would you rank SEC? Double A, high A? Where would you rank the level of play?
It's somewhere between there, and it's not to say every player is at that
No,
level.
but the
but what-
competitiveness is
look,
pretty great.
and you look at some of those, teams in those rosters. Could you imagine if you just made a couple of all-star teams from SEC schools alone? I think they absolutely compete. I think the one thing that you'll see from a college to a pro level is the adjustment, the speed of the game, and certainly the wooden bat, right?
Yeah, wooden
Versus
bat's tough. Yeah.
the aluminum bat. But the speed of the game is, I think, what players talk most about, the analytical part, but also the mental part. That generally, yeah, those college programs, they all have that. They all invest in that. But I do think it is a jump to the pro level. And that's why when you see players who come out of those types of programs and are in the major leagues and performing within 18 and 24 months, it's just a remarkably impressive feat by the player. And that started probably a decade prior because I know you and I have a passion for the youth sports, the high school sports, the college sport. That's become more advanced. And not everybody who plays the game because they play on a travel team together are equal,
Yeah.
but there is, I think, more head and shoulders of one particular player on really every team than everyone else. And then that's the player that you see that trajectory over time, get to those upper levels, play in the minors, play in the big leagues, and maybe even sign one of these major extensions now.
Those are amazing. So let's get to the agent life here. When a player signs with you, what's the first conversation you have with them beyond baseball? We were talking a little bit off camera, but would love to hear more from your like what outside of baseball are you advising on them on, helping them with like a personal life, being able to, finances. Like tell us
Sure.
more about the beyond the baseball conversation with your athletes.
Well, I think every player is different. Some players are a little more business specific and they want to keep it as such. I think generally speaking, in my experience, they have interests, right? I can't tell you the number of baseball players that were also great basketball players, football players, hockey players,
yeah.
and maybe they were better in those sports, but baseball had more of a trajectory to get to the big leagues or have more
money.
career,
Yeah,
right?
it
More
does.
career
That
earnings.
was why I wanted to do it instead of hockey.
But they might love hockey.
Yeah,
So when it's
I
spring
was-
training and you're in Florida, they're going to want to go to a Tampa Bay Lightning
Yeah.
game. They might have studied business. They might have been a broadcaster. They might love biology. And so they do have a decent amount of downtime.
They
Um,
do have a lot of downtime, a lot of time on the bus, playing, yeah.
and I think them not abandoning the other passions allows them to balance out. Look, the game's hard, and
So hard.
it's really designed where you're gonna fail far more than you're gonna
So
succeed,
hard,
right?
yep.
We always hear if you hit 300, you'll be in the Hall of Fame, but that means you had to fail 7 out of the 10 times.
Yeah.
How does that athlete balance out, especially in that world of social media where there's those haters and shamers that are
Every
gonna come
day.
after you, and you gotta maybe have the social media if you want the endorsement deal, or
Yes,
you
you
wanna do
do.
some of the things to build your brand? Well, that kinda goes with the good and the bad, but I'm a big believer that understanding that client as to who they are, what their passions are, what they liked, and that could have been in high school, in college. A lot of them like to fish or hunt. I tell my players when they have a bad day, you know, the proverbial age old, hey, don't think about it. Just go out there and have fun. Go fishing one day. Hit the golf course. Maybe a morning hunt. Recharge your battery, clear your mind, then get back in it. And so I think the answer would be knowing the client, taking the time. And it's not necessarily on day one because you might call it recruit that player. You'll recruit that player in some cases for weeks to months to even years before they choose you as their representation. You're going to get to know them. And I don't think it's always about TikTok or video games. It's about things like I described. And the better you can know the player, the better you can know the family, the more they are going to trust you, the more you can invest in them. And then I think it is that journey together where you are truly a team. So I always try to get to know that player well. There's one in particular, I'll intentionally name drop him, is Kyle Farmer. Now,
Awesome. Shout out
Farmer,
Kyle.
unbelievable guy. I'll see what I could do about having him on your show.
Please, we'd
But
love to have him.
this guy was, and I didn't know this until a little later in the representing him, but this guy was such a good baseball player, goes on to Georgia, plays there, gets drafted by the Dodgers, plays in the minor leagues, hits a walk-off on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball in his first ever game for
Oh,
against the
wow.
Giants, no less.
Wow.
His childhood best friend, Alex Woods, on that very team, first one to run out onto the field and congratulate him. That's what I think you see up here. You see the Sports Center highlight, what a story, this guy get there. The grind to get to that point, at times probably not being considered a top prospect or having players in front of them. It was the conversations with a player like that were always more about what else do you have a passion for just in case, right? Never know when a player is going to get hurt. Never know when a player all of a sudden their talent starts to plateau and they get leapfrogged. So what else? I mean, I've had players ask me, how do you franchise a Chick-fil-A? I don't know, but it's my job to figure out how you do that because that might be their next step in life. But with a farmer, what I always liked is I always enjoyed the broadcast. I enjoy creating, making TV shows or movies, even if it's in the world of sports, having my hand in that. A lot of players seem to like that. He was an extra in the movie The Blind Side. You know,
Wow, really? Where? What
plays the quarterback. Why did he
No
play the
way.
quarterback?
Did you
Because
get him that?
no, this was long before
Yeah.
I even knew him because it was early in his college career. But I guess when they shoot those movies, they use actors. They might not have the athleticism, lack of a better
Yeah.
term. And so I guess the quarterback was fumbling the ball. And so he stepped in and he becomes this extra. But he's always had an affinity for it.
That's
You know,
so
he's gotten
cool.
to know Sandra Bullock. I remember he got to the big leagues. He hits the walk-off home run. He's a Dodger. And it was like, be kind of cool to reconnect with Sandra Bullock. I wonder if she'd remember me. And wow, that was a little more of an aha. Now he's in the big leagues for one of the best teams in baseball,
Yeah.
right? That arc. But where's his passion? Well, at some point, the game's going to end. Does he go on TV? Does he want to make movies of his own? Does he want to connect with some of those people? It's my job to know those things. And while not everyone's going to go into broadcasting when they're done playing or want to be a coach at the major league or minor league or collegiate level, they're going to do something else. And they likely have a family and responsibilities. You need to know that player in summary of my answer so that you can not only properly represent them in the moment and be their good, bad, or indifferent, but also hopefully set them up for life after the game because you make a commitment to that player when you first meet them that you're going to be there, good, bad, or indifferent, here and after the career's over.
I love that. No, and so what's the major misconception you think on the outside world around agents? What do you think the biggest misconception
That
is?
it's all about money. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Money is so crucial. I've seen players, and I think players have even gone public to say, I'll take a little less to go play in a certain city.
How do you feel when that happens?
The player's the boss. So
Yeah.
my answer is the player's the boss. Your job as an agent, I think fundamentally, even if you look up the definitions of the words, is advisor. You're an advisor. You advise. Here are the pros, here are the cons, here are the options. You're going to make the decision. And I think to really directly answer the question is the misconception is the player did this or the agent guided them to that exclusively for the money. And I don't really believe in that. I think the proper job of the agent is to, yeah, absolutely go get as much as you can for that player and their family, but get it to a point where they make the decision and they know all the pros and the cons, the strengths and the weaknesses, the good and the bad. Players sometimes like to play in various parts of the country. Let's just go with the Midwest, and Chicago included, versus New York or Los Angeles or Boston or Philadelphia. So tough places to play. You sometimes see players thrive when they go somewhere else. And the hometown fan says, how come they didn't do that when they were here? It's because they weren't comfortable. They weren't really built for that environment. And I think, let's just say a player's in a free agent situation. If you don't know that and you don't know the player and you ram them into a city where they're not going to succeed, it's going to be a problem.
So
And it might not
do you see a
be a
big
problem.
difference there between city location? Like,
Absolutely.
okay, so
Because the media has a major factor in that too.
why?
Well, I mean, you go to New York, and probably even Philly and Boston. I think
You think those are the three toughest markets?
absolutely. I don't think the LA market and the Chicago market is as tough. And again, look, I didn't play. I was a broadcaster in the minor leagues. I've been an agent for almost 2 decades. But this is all, speaking to players, this is all conversationally seeing it, not just with the player, but with members of a front office, a coaching staff, and even the media themselves. Every single aspect of the game to game. Baseball, there's 162 games.
That's so
The
brutal.
game that's going to happen tonight in one of those cities at the end of April will be scrutinized at every level.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alex Cora just got fired. The whole, like,
Yeah.
yeah, Jason Varitek, a legend in
Legend name
Boston, got fired.
moves on, right? And what do? They've already won 2 games. Does that mean that the interim
Oh, they
coaching
won
staff
the last 2 games?
Yeah.
Wow.
So does that mean that the interim coaching staff has got this magic? But I don't know what it is, but I do know
Chad
this.
Tracy, right? I saw that.
Chad Tracy,
Yeah.
who played in the minor leagues for
Yeah, he's
a
a good
long
player.
time, played in the big leagues a little bit. But when you see that throng of media waiting for you at your locker, and really, unless there's someone there from the organization to be like, okay, thanks everyone, like moving on here, you don't see that necessarily in Tampa. You certainly don't see that in cities, not to say they don't have reporters and there's not post-game coverage, but you don't see it as much in Miami or Pittsburgh or
Yeah.
Colorado. But you absolutely, they're waiting for you before you get there. They're waiting for you long after you leave. You can't drive home and listen to anything or follow social media because the sports talk or the back page papers in those cities, that is their job. And I do think it comes with the territory. You don't get to choose it sometimes because you're drafted into an organization. But if we're talking about education and tying it into sports, the amount of education that I believe is dedicated to the minor league process now of prepping that player with media, with awareness, with finances, with the concerns of outside factors. We're seeing gambling, obviously, across all sports. Maybe even having a player or challenging them if they're an American to be a little more bilingual because a lot of their teammates are going to be that.
That was a great push.
I think that's where we could talk about math, English, science, right? The traditionals. I think what I'm talking about now and what you're seeing investments being made by organizations into their players at a young age level in the minors, that's an education too. So they're more prepped for the ultimate goal, which is when they get to the big leagues, to be the best player they could be on the field because the distractions off of it, they've been able to better master and handle. And that's part of my job, to help them with anything off the field so that they can go be the best player they can be on the field.
Well, can we talk more about the social media piece? I thought it was really interesting how you're talking about the haters and such. Do you tell your players to not read it, or like how do you like what's your advice to them when they are having a slump or whatnot? Do you say like, hey, like block it out, or how do you navigate all the trolls for these incredibly talented professional baseball players?
Well, I think first off, all these social media platforms have various settings. And so you can do you invest the time into teaching? And we do. We try to we have a department where we try to teach our players, like, here's some of the restrictions you could put on. So maybe that gets um, cast off to the side before you even know it was said or launched. But I think the player has to have awareness. And what you're seeing with the younger player is social media has been around long enough now that if they were in high school or even back to middle school, now they're at a college program, now they're in the minors, maybe young in the big leagues, they're already familiar with it. But reminding them that they need to focus on what they do and not get caught up. They could have the perfect game. They could hit 4 home runs in a game, and one just went over the wall. Someone will criticize that. And while there might be 100 compliments telling them how great they are, that 101st one about how terrible they are, I think human nature is
It hurts the
you
most. It does. It
gravitate toward that
hurts.
negative,
It
sadly.
does.
So I do think it goes back to education. They're familiar with social media. They know it and have been around it, right?
Mhm.
At least long enough to realize that even if it's on an adolescent level and the high school or middle school hijinks of what you had to deal with, which is where I go back to that point earlier of prepping yourself by focusing on courage, confidence, and ability is just going to help you later down the road. I think for the most part, the players know how to handle it. They know how to manage it. They will ask for assistance. It's hard to just say, just ignore it. That's
So hard.
impossible.
It's
It's
so
just generally impossible. But I do think that there is greater limitations, meaning to access, right? Like you can reduce how people correspond so that if you do want to use your social media profile to either give back, be philanthropic, show who you are as a person, sure, there'll be benefits to people are going to want to do endorsement deals or a product deal or things along those lines. Why not take advantage of those things, paid or unpaid? A lot of players will say, you're going to send me that for free? Yeah, absolutely, I'll promote that product. It doesn't have to be for money. It's just something they believe in. They've been wearing that for years. But you do leave yourself a little bit vulnerable that there are going to be those haters and shamers. And I think because of that education from an agent or an agency, from the organization who you work very closely with. Remember, this is an investment for all of us.
Yep.
That player and that family is an investment that everyone is rooting for a positive outcome.
Yeah, you're a
You
team.
work with them often. And I think you asked a question earlier about the perception of the agent. Generally, the public sees the agent only when there's the mega free agent contract, regardless of sport. They don't see the behind the scenes of working with the club, caring for the player, caring for the family, the things that happen when they get hurt, or maybe when things don't really go that well up here and they have to take some time off. And that might be in the middle of the winter. No one sees that. And that's where I think that misconception comes. But when, not to be pun here, it's a total team effort.
I love that. So we talked a little about Kyle Farmer, who's an incredible player, and you've done a great job with him. What about let's talk about Kyle Higashioka. Am I
Yeah,
pronouncing it
Higashioka.
correct?
He's the
So
best.
he went through and he's had an incredible career. He's crushing it.
Yeah.
He was committed to Berkeley, great school, but he took a $500,000 signing option. It's obviously worked out great for him because he's making a killing. Like, how did you work through? I don't know if you're working with him yet at that point. Like, how did he navigate that challenge, and what has it been like working with such a great, talented player like him?
So I started at the firm a year after he was drafted.
Awesome.
But he's a high school kid that's now at the lowest level of low in the minor leagues from Southern Cal, now in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
But because I had explained that I get involved when the player's a pro, I immediately started to work with Kyle. And here I am probably in my mid 30s where he's in his late teens, right? In that gap. You've got to find a way to connect and be available for the player. So very smart, could have went to Berkeley. Sometimes that opportunity to not only play professional baseball, but I think baseball and even the agents have done a good job that if you want to continue your education during the winter and even now with so much online learning during the season, which is a little trickier because
It's
that can
hard.
get a
Yeah.
little
Yeah. You gotta focus on
complicated
the
and
game.
cumbersome.
Yeah.
But there's enough ways to go back and finish your education. He was always just so smart. No surprise that he became one of the best defensive catchers in the game and ultimately get those contracts. But what always impressed me about Kyle, two things in particular, aside from his talent as a player, who also had to go through Tommy John surgeries and injuries and ups and downs, and having players, including catchers like the Gary Sanchez's of the world, uh, leapfrog him. I used that term before on where they stood on that on that depth chart of who's going to play at the major league level, right? Is he was always really academic. He was a big reader and always looking to invest in growing his mind, especially from a mental strength thing, something that's really taken over the game in the last 5 or 10 years. Investing in the mental, visual, those kinds of off the field things that back in the day it was just all about what you could do physically. But he was also a remarkably talented musician. This guy could shred a guitar. And I remember when he was at his first or second major league spring training, you had the old veterans, the Jeters and those types of players, the Marianos. And they don't call it hazing, but it was a little bit of put the rookie in front of everyone and what's your kind of magic talent as if it was a show, and you had to entertain the group. And all of a sudden, he just starts busting out shredding Metallica as
Wow.
this 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid who's playing potentially, and I don't remember the story that well, but you got Mariano there who comes into Metallica. I wouldn't be surprised if what he was shredding was Enter Sandman, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
How many athletes really have that skill set to be that talented in something other than sports, namely in music? I speak at high schools all over the country, and I think this has been timeless, right? You have the athletes and you have the kids in the arts. They're a lot more alike than unlike. The talent, the requirement, the
Yeah, the
commitment, they're
commitment, the
always,
passion.
the
Mhm.
lights are on. They can't make a mistake.
Yep.
Everyone's watching. And I also think that's why when they become pros, the athletes always want to do stuff with the entertainers and the singers and whatnot, and vice versa.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
that's why
do.
they sit courtside and they do commercials together. The mutual respect at that higher level I don't see as much at those lower levels. And I think when you have a Kyle whose parents did such a great job and made him so balanced, education, obviously music, and certainly baseball, then it all kind of comes together. I think that probably allowed Kyle to succeed and overcome and be in the position he's in because he had an outlet other than just the game, regardless of sport. He had an outlet to take his mind off things, which settles you in, allows you to be a little positively distracted, and then get back at it. Where I think you and I both know you speak to a lot of coaches, you do a great job canvassing the country. The number of student athletes and probably their parents who are just, we are going to go all eggs in one basket on this one sport, play one position, just do this for 11 and a half months a year. I think that could be concerning
Well,
to how you want the end of this story to actually play out.
it's a lot.
And Kyle's a great
Yeah,
example
no, he's
of
great.
the perseverance.
What do you think is the number to not go to college? What's your number if you had a son going through the process?
I have to give the kind of very agent speak answer of, hey, that number's personal for everyone,
Yeah,
right?
fair.
I think the only thing I would say to that is if you're at a point where you're going to get drafted, especially now with the slotting system and there's only 20 rounds and there might be
There
fewer
was
rounds.
50 rounds when I was in high school. We had a
No
kid in
doubt.
high school, the shortstop a year above me, who went like 42nd round. He didn't sign, he went to Iowa Western
The
instead, but yeah.
yeah, there's everyone I think knows the Piazza 62nd
Yeah,
rounder.
yeah.
I remember I was broadcasting in the minor leagues with the Yankees, and there was a player who was drafted in the 88th round named Scott Siebel, and he got
Wow,
called
he
up to the
made it?
big leagues
There was that many
because
rounds then?
80 they were over 90. They used to draft until nobody wanted to pick anymore. But
Oh
back
my
then there were 7 or
goodness.
8 rounds of the minor leagues too. They even had draft and follow. They could draft you, you could go back to school, and they would follow you to see if they want to offer you a contract. Needless to say,
Wow.
the world has changed in a lot of capacities, right? Not just in
Only
this.
20 rounds
There's
now.
only 20, and look, we could fast forward this conversation 8 months. There might only be 10 or 15 after the
Really?
next, yeah, after the next collective bargaining. But the question on what's the number, every family's different. The dynamics of, we'll just argue Southern California versus other parts of the country, those two answers for the exact same player, those families and what they have might be different. But what I do
It's
think
fair.
is you generally see a player say, this is my number. And you're going to work with the team that if they want that player, that's the number. Where I think you do see some things go sideways is where maybe the player panics, or maybe there isn't the proper level of education there across the board, where they wind up taking something that they really didn't want. And that's where I don't ever say this is the right number. I think it's finding the number that's right, using your team and your resources, and then generally sticking to that plan to get to that point as close as you can, perfect world, exceed it, knowing that whatever, if you do turn it down, whatever you committed to, more than likely on the college side, right? Are you going to the school, 4-year school? You're going to the junior college. Um, that you trust in, that's going to be a great scenario for you too. And then your name gets called again a few years down the road.
Have you noticed a big difference of the athletes that had a college education versus didn't, or whether it's the family support? Like, what's the biggest thing you've noticed in the maturity of the players you work with?
It's funny you say that because I'm a personal believer that if the player's ready to go, they can go. And some of these young individuals that I'll meet in high school, even sophomores or juniors, they're so polished. They're so polished.
Why?
You would think,
Why?
I
The
think,
parents?
I think it's because of the education of what we're discussing. I think generally speaking, the right parent who knows that, hey, look, it's not just a game. It's all those things we talked about when you choose a city. The ability to handle the press and the ability to manage the finances and the ability to know that you might not do so well. The ability to just be nice and kind and welcoming to these other competitor players who might be drafted ahead of you or play the same position of you on that travel or elite or showcase team. You got to get along with everyone. You got to be kind to everyone. You got to be respectful to everyone. So I think that you can start to see that now where, again, 5, probably closer to 10 years ago and beyond, it was just focusing on the sport and the physical, right? So whether that was the parent, whether that is somebody that they have in their corner, an advisor, because before they become pros, agents are called advisors. They're not called agents. And I told you that could start as early as 8th or ninth grade. So they've got some, we'll call it professional counsel to them as another source that's going to help guide them through that process so that by the time they are sophomores or juniors and they start meeting with teams and they interview with area scouts, or maybe they interview with assistant general managers or the scouting director,
Oh, okay.
or
That happens that
eventually
young now.
that general manager, before they draft them, are going to go to the combine and sit in a suite and have a conversation like we're having. Do they have good eye contact? Do they have posture? Are they able to talk about some things that aren't TikTok or Instagram or video game related, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that there is more of an investment collectively from the team. And I don't mean the actual 30 clubs team, the team around that player, that if they are ready and have that mature polish to them, it's not about necessarily going to college. I am also a believer, and I know you interview a lot of college coaches. They're in a business too.
They are.
They're in a business
They
to
gotta
coach a
win and keep
college
their
program
job.
and
Yep.
win to keep their
Yep.
job.
Yep.
So when that
Wages are,
player
the incentives aren't aligned always.
obviously, right? That player is either going to choose to go be arguably a star for that program and that coach committed to that player years earlier and started to build their board and their team around them. And now here come the Kansas City Royals, let's say. They offer X, maybe have to go offer Y to say, we need you in Surprise, Arizona starting next month, versus you're going to go to Purdue or
Yeah.
you're going to go to Miami, right?
Yeah.
It's a business for them too.
It's a total
Um,
business. College sports is a
but
business.
where is the kid prepared to go? Because the flip side to that is, are they ready to go to Surprise, where it's going to
It's a
be
big job.
110 degrees every day when they get there with no rain, and it's 100 degrees at night, and they're literally across the country in some cases. And yes, those resources that I referenced are there, but this isn't going to a college campus where you are absolutely considered to be a key part of it and you get to go to football games.
Yeah,
And
it's
yeah,
fun.
I know you got to go to class, but you get an experience. And you get an experience with teammates right away and coaches right away. It's a business, and I put that in quotes, but it is a college experience. You go to Surprise, that's a business. You
Yeah.
made a business decision.
Yeah.
And while those other resources might be there, you represent in that example, I think you're in charge of one person. It's not necessarily about the team effort of rah, rah, let's go win as a team. Yeah, the organizations try to create that culture, but your job is to go succeed as a pro. That's why they call him a pro player at 17, 18 now. Your job is to go succeed as a pro, get along with your teammates, create some bonding, and then go do it at the highest level. That sometimes is not built for they're an adolescent, for every 17, 18-year-old child, right? Young
Wow.
adult. And sometimes you see players can't miss coming out of high school. Those factors did not allow them to just go concentrate on the field and go perform.
Yeah, it's
That's
hard.
what I
It's tough.
think I see.
What's the hardest call you've ever had to make to a client?
People ask me this question every once in a while, and I just told the story, and I'm going to give, I guess, the positive to it 5 or 6 years later. I find the hardest call is when you, as a non player who works in the industry as a representative, they're to the boss, you work for them, call them and say, I think it's time to turn the page
To
and focus on
retire.
something. I put retire in quotes
Yeah.
to no longer be a player.
Yeah.
And I can't get you a job, or look, even if I could get you a job, they're probably going to release you before spring training's over. Or I know Mexico called, but you're married and have 2 kids, and do you really want to go down there in the political climate or whatever, right? But to tell somebody who from probably like toddler age
Yeah.
have worn a uniform with pride, maybe have went to the big leagues, made money in the big leagues, whatever, to tell them as a non-player who had never experienced that
Yeah.
at a high level, that they have to pick probably a different vocation because you can't play the game anymore, or at least there's no one out there who wants you to play the game for them, which is also an ego thing, right? How you position that conversation, I've always found that to be one of the harder things to do. I think there's a lot of hard parts of the agent world, but I think that one's the toughest because A, why how can they not take it personally? B, there's that little desperation inside that immediately says, "What am I going to do next?" Which
So hard. The
if you
identity shift is so hard.
if you've been there for all those years and focused on all of those elements, that baseball player is their job. It's not who they are as a person. It's their position. It's their livelihood. And some are really good at it and they make a lot of money. They're going to do something else for the next 50 years of their life. Fact, right?
Yeah.
This isn't an opinion. This is a fact. If you have been there and helped prep them, guide them, prepare them, that desperation won't be as great. And in some cases, and I'll name drop 2 or 3 people, Jordan Pacheco, who's now a major league coach with the Rockies, Cody Ashe, who's a major league coach with the Detroit Tigers, Seth Mejias-Breen, who's a minor league coach with the Seattle Mariners, and I think within the next year or two will be on a major league staff, possibly Seattle. He's in AAA right now. Those were 3 players that had a very difficult time hearing it's time to take the uniform off. I still have the texts on my phone that I like to keep because it might have gotten a little aggressive or personal, but I like to show them when I see them in a major league stadium now and say, remember when you didn't
Like
want to
those
go take the
guys, yeah.
hitting coach job in
Yeah.
Lake Elsinore, right? And start your new chapter of your baseball life because an organization thought, okay, you played for X number of years. We want you to come coach for, Y number of years, including if you're a coach in the majors or you're a player in the majors. You can get to the same 10-year kind of milestone mark, regardless of what that combination is. And I'm not saying that's why you do it, but to have that player understand that you're going to go from playing the game to help teaching the game so the next version of you has an opportunity to go up and do what you've done. That's always been the hardest part. But I will say that it's probably one of my more proud moments developing my own career of not only feeling comfortable and confident to have that conversation, but to have those players and their families see them thrive at the major league level for something that I know they pushed back so hard on once upon a time, and understandably so. That's been a very cool moment for me. And so whether it's at the high school level, the college level, the minor league level, the major league level, to see them career pivot and give back oftentimes to the game in a different capacity, that's a proud moment for me. I'll admit that.
What would you rank the pro leagues? After MLB, what's the best league in the world?
Japan.
Then what?
Yeah. Korea's done an
Korea,
unbelievable job.
MLB, Japan, Korea, Mexico.
Yeah. I
Chinese,
mean,
okay, what would
you're
you-
probably also, look, you've got those winter leagues, right?
Yeah.
So you got winter leagues in
Dominican
Venezuela and the Dominican and Puerto Rico and Mexico. Those have become really, really good. And back before the contracts became what they became and the teams started to have a little more of a say of, look, this is your contract and you're an employer. You play
they don't
for
want
us.
you
Like,
playing in the
we
winter,
don't
yeah,
want you
yeah.
breaking a leg trying to rob a home run in some not nearly as nice stadium, we'll say, in one of those other countries that have divots in the outfield
Yeah.
and maybe their fence is made out of wood, right? I think the number of players who went back to those countries for tremendous pride and where they came from, which also you have to respect. They don't forget why the WBC was
It was
so
amazing.
so great in
Love the
those Latin
WBC.
American countries or those Far East countries. They were easy to root for. Nothing against the USA. They were very easy to root for. But I do think it's the big leagues first, Japan second. Korea has done an incredible job. Yes, there's
You can make real money
Taiwan.
there too.
You can look, we've sent, I'm always careful of how I correct that quickly. The number of players that even I or we have represented, where you brought them in the minor leagues or maybe through the draft or whatever, they hit a point in AAA or as a rookie or first 2 years in the big leagues, they just can't stick. They can not only go overseas and let's say make $1 million versus $25,000 a month in the minors, they get a chance to learn how to pitch. This game at the major league level has become so velocity specific.
It
So
is.
every single team, everyone throws 95.
Oh no, they
You know,
really
and
do.
and even if you tick up to 94, it's like, yeah, it's only 94.
Yep.
Like 15 years ago, when you were playing, like if you faced someone in the Big Ten throwing 94, they were probably getting drafted on the first day,
Yep.
right? So to be able to go play, namely in those Far East countries, where contact, you watch the WBC, how they spoil pitches, they get this much of it, but keeps the at bat alive. And statistically, the longer the at bat goes, the longer or better chance that the hitter is going to win that battle.
Wow,
Okay.
really?
No,
Why?
yeah. I think
Pitcher
it's
gets
just because
tired.
the pitcher starts to run out of where they're going to be able to execute it. And I think the hitter's confidence starts to, I'm seeing the ball, I'm getting
Yeah,
the
you're
bat
seeing
on the
more.
ball.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that the hitter's always going to get a hit, but I think the hitter's got a better chance of putting the ball in play than they do if they were going to strike out. So if you look up that statistic, the longer the at bat goes, the more it favors the hitter. If you're a pitcher and you couldn't stick, maybe because it was control, yeah, maybe it was velocity, but maybe it was just a real ability to learn how to execute getting a player out. You come back to the big leagues, don't get me wrong, velocity matters. Can you get hitters out at the major league level? That's what a team wants to know. You get a little more velo to it, even better. But can you get players out? It's why you see relievers sometimes, they'll throw this guy, and then the next reliever out of the pen is not the same. It's a different arm angle. Maybe it's 8 or 10 miles an hour lower. Maybe they're more of a changeup guy. So I think this opportunity to go to the Far East, learn how to develop, make a couple of bucks, come back to the US, make a whole lot more money, and stick in the major league levels. You've seen it. Merrill Kelly has become an incredibly consistent, really well-established major league frontline starter. He went to Korea for 3 or 4 years. I don't think he ever got to the big leagues with Tampa Bay at the time he went over. He's a 10-year veteran. He's made a ton of money. He's pitched in huge World Series games, huge WBC games. That didn't exist back in the day. It's almost like Mr. Baseball. Your career went to die over there.
Huh.
Now your career can be revitalized. And I think your question was, where does the league stand? Because that league is so good and so competitive. Not only are you seeing the American players go there, get a chance, improve, come back, you're seeing more and more Japanese talent come here and be really good right away
Done really
because
well.
those players are playing against better competition versus maybe 10 years ago.
I love that. And so, talking a little bit more about the media, you've been part of the broadcasting world, agent world. How do you feel the media shapes public perception of players, and how can you do a better job of having it work to your advantage with affecting your career earnings and your power?
Well, I think there are certain players that maybe had a difficult time getting into the Hall of Fame, at least back then, or even to this day, based on how they treated the media. Um, Look, you can use the media to your advantage, or you can really have that media turn against you. I think again that proper starting with being polite, right? You could have the worst game of your life to just say to the reporter who hopefully has some feel and awareness, like, hey, listen, can we maybe push this down? Or just doing it in a respectful way, knowing that there's always a camera on you and it could be framed one way or another, not literally, but figuratively. They could position what that comment was, what that face eye roll, whatever. However, they control that, not you. So I think it starts very, very simply with how do you treat people and how do you respect them. But I think the media could really be something that is of importance. And it's not just to the player, it's to the agent too, right? If you represent good people, not just good players, the media sees that. And then they'll tell you that, right? I'm friendly with some really well-known, high-established, major national broadcasters. I don't say that to be showy. I say that because I'm always more proud when they say, "Hey, I interviewed your guy," or "I interviewed the agency's guy." What a great dude. What a great player, but what a better person. Like, I take tremendous pride in that.
Me
I think we
too.
all do at our firm because it's about you're gonna be the player for a certain period of time. You're gonna be the person forever. So,
It's so true.
again, like, I just I don't know what the answer is other than, all of the adages of, kill 'em with kindness or, I don't have to be liked by everyone, but I hope to be respected by as many people as I can be. Not everyone's personality is gonna mesh. I'm sure the same is the case in the clubhouse with the media. But if they respect the way you go about your business, respect their time, give them time, but also have some boundaries to understand, hey, look, you also need to know this is our clubhouse and you're a guest in it. I think most media will not only respect that, they will favor you when sometimes things don't go as well as you're hoping they go.
Yeah, it's good. Get the media on your side. That's
Yeah.
good coaching. And
And
so,
listen, do I have to put the old proverbial, this is just my opinion, right? They always say, like, you could speak to another agent, you could speak to another executive in sports, which is what I consider myself to be, more of an executive in sports, an educator, if
okay.
you will, in sports. This is my opinion, but I feel like when you look at the players that we've had a chance to represent, that there's enough of them over the years that kind of fall in line with that logic.
I love that. So we're gonna go into our this or that's now, a rapid fire series where we're gonna get your feedback on a variety of topics and just go with whatever comes to mind first. So contract value or contract length?
Um, I think again, going back to, and I'm not the best in rapid firing back. Um, I think length, as long as the money's there, offers security. Whereas if it's short term and it doesn't go your way, that second bite of the apple might not be there. So me personally, I like length.
College baseball or a draft straight out of high school?
Uh, I'm a fan of college baseball. That does not mean it has to exclusively be a four-year school. I am a huge subscriber to junior colleges, and that jump from a maturation process to just even do 1 year to JC could be enormous, and the player can go back out and get drafted again.
Love it. College degree or professional experience?
Professional experience all day long in the world of sports. You want to go be a doctor or a lawyer, you want to be a marine biologist. That is not the case. But I am a huge believer that experience will trump education in sports any day of the week.
Learning on the job or formal education?
Probably somewhat of a blend of both, but if I were to do a pie chart, I think learning on the job is at a minimum 51% and the formal education's 49. I'm not speaking from my own personal experience, but we already talked about my GPA. I think in today's modern world, the traditional education at the four-year school, you can learn a lot on YouTube, right? You can learn a
Yeah,
lot on
YouTube's great.
Googling something. And so I think experience is going to win out in if you're really trying to get something done.
Knowing your worth or trusting your agent?
Knowing your worth.
Fair. Life skills or baseball skills? Which one gets taught more in pro ball?
In pro ball, I think baseball skills, but as we talked about today, I really hand it to the teams. I tip my cap to them, as if you will, that they've really focused on the life skills, how important those life skills are, investing in that, even creating almost borderline dormitories where back in the day, players used to have to find an apartment at 17 years old in that using Kansas City and surprise example. Now they live in a dorm, very similar to as a freshman in college would live in a dorm. And by having that, they have structure to use some of those life skill lessons where they'll put them in a, so to speak, classroom. And I just such a great pivot by the baseball world to start investing more in that. But
Okay.
at the pro level, it's about bat, ball,
Yeah,
glove, spikes, things like that.
I like it. Raw talent or high baseball IQ?
Man, that's a tough one. Um, I think it's raw talent because the IQ
You can teach
can
it.
be developed.
It's
You
harder to
you can't
teach raw
necessarily
talent,
teach talent.
especially for big league talent. Character or statistics?
A character, I'm a character guy. So, the here can I if I could just elaborate on that.
Yeah,
Statistics are remarkably subjective. I
yeah.
could just let's just go to a high
Especially at the
school.
youth level.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness, I can go to a high school and you could have the greatest statistics and you go to a school with 1,000 students. I can argue that the school a couple of towns over that has 3,500 students, you don't even make their team,
Yeah, you could.
let
Yeah,
alone
making the team
right
hard, making
be
the
a
varsity team
star.
serious.
So I've always, and I'm very leery of this with parents. With well, my kid is this, or I have those stats. It's like, eh. So I'm not choosing statistics at all in that case.
Long career at average pay or short career at elite pay?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I mean, listen, I think that for some of the players I've been around, they've had long careers at, we'll call it average, and that is another thing when we're talking about dollars and cents at the major league level, because I think it shows them, all right, well, what's next? And I think sometimes, yeah, I've seen players get a lot of money in a short period of time, have no real game plan. What's next? And maybe that money wasn't wisely invested. They didn't have a chance to be around people who can help them. And that includes players in a clubhouse who will tell you to do X or Y
Don't listen.
or advise you. So I think having that longer, going back to that prior answer, a little more of a steady Eddie, have the right people in your corner, plan for life after the game. I think that would be my choice.
Okay, we're gonna do a college baseball this or that now, so let's just whip through it, see what you think. SEC or ACC?
Oh, that's tricky. I mean, I have a buddy in the ACC, but if you're asking me from like a sheer, like, hey, just look at
Yep.
the proof is in the pudding, it's SEC.
Power 5 or top mid-major?
In terms of a preference or where you have to go.
Wherever you wanna take it.
Listen, I'm a mid-major fan. I think everyone, even just using
I like it, that's
basketball,
contrarian.
look, you look at basketball, everyone roots for those mid-majors. Who loves those
Yeah,
upstates in the
yeah.
11 or 12 or 13 seed? But I do think there's so much talent in the mid-major, and I think you can play a lot more, and I think you can really grow a lot more, and you have a better chance of having your name called when you're on the field than if, you think I'm gonna go up and then we're sitting on the bench for 2 years.
Yeah, this'll probably be easy for you then, but, playing time immediately or waiting your turn at a blue blood program?
I think it's go play because today's modern day world, and this is unfortunately the back end of the mid-major comment,
You
you
could
go,
transfer.
you crush it, you could transfer without having to wait, and you get an opportunity to really advance very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Ivy League education or full athletic scholarship?
Man, that's tricky speaking to a guy that went to Penn, but
Don't worry, I'm here to listen to you.
I think that I think I'm gonna go with the Ivy League education, and here's why. A full athletic scholarship. Well, how long is that athletic scholarship, right? Sometimes they're year to year.
Yep.
And I think if you're at that Ivy League education, I'm a huge believer and subscriber to there's other ways to get money. You could get it academically, you could get it merit wise. There are ways to offset that. You walk out that door with an Ivy League education, you're going to make money back over the course of time. That full scholarship, and everyone's situation is a little different, could be more subjective than you realize in the moment.
I agree all the way on that, small market where you're a star or big market where you're depth.
I think I'm a small market
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. Staying close to home or chasing the best opportunity?
I think it's the opportunity. That goes back to courage, confidence, and ability. I think sometimes people that either stay close to home or even play close to home, those outside external factors could hold you back a little bit or maybe not make you as good, including spreading your wings and challenging yourself with maybe where are your limits. So I think I'd rather get out there and take the best opportunity and trust my stuff.
East Coast baseball culture or West Coast baseball culture?
South's not a choice, huh?
No,
Um,
just East or West.
Listen, I think I grew up in the Northeast, spent a lot of time on the East Coast now, but I think I'm that kind of West Coast, West Coast guy
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
And I do. I think the philosophy there is a little more laid back. And I think baseball has changed where the more relaxed you are, the better chance you
better
can
play,
succeed.
you do.
Whereas I think that East Coast is still a little more old school. It's a little more pressure. Not everyone's built for that. It makes you uncomfortable. If you're squeezing the bat or the ball too tight, it's going to be hard to
Yeah, it's
succeed.
different in other sports.
I'm West
Baseball,
Coast,
you
West
gotta be
Coast.
yeah, baseball, you gotta be more relaxed. Declaring early for the draft or finishing your degree?
That is truly a business decision, but it also is if you go and finish that degree, here's my answer, both. And the reason I can answer it both is you can go declare, get the money and the draft ranking or whatever we're calling that as a group, from the agents to the organizations to the schools they will allow you and try to help you get to school and finish that degree in a reasonable amount of time. That's right for you. You could get both. But if I think you mean it more the traditional way, go 4 years, get the degree, or 5 years and graduate. well, you might not have a whole lot of draft leverage
Yeah,
left
you
anymore.
gotta
So I
take.
think it has a lot to do with where are you, where's the money, where can you be drafted, going back and finishing. And I've had the Kirk Casallis and the Kyle Farmers go finish after 4 years, get the degree, and they both went on to have incredible major league careers. But what they didn't have to do is go back to get the piece of paper.
Yeah, full respect there. Minor league grind or staying an extra year in college? I guess this is kind of on that question.
Yeah, look, I think that in my opinion, you could go stay the extra year. Um, there's going to be a place to play. And the one thing about the independent leagues that we talked about, filling in those cities that have lost minor league, is you still see players signed out of the minors. You know, you referenced and joked about the Savannah Bananas.
Love them. I'm a huge
Some of
fan,
those
man.
guys, and I know Reese, who's Superman. He lives in my town. We're
Oh,
friendly.
cool. Love
I once
Jesse
upon
Cole.
a time was asked to represent him when he was literally the best offensive player in Pepperdine's conference. Was, unfortunately the result of COVID, and they only had but his ability to go play at an independent league for 2 years and hit led him, and his charisma led him to be a huge star for the Savannah Bananas. So in that example, you can go play the extra year, get the education. There's going to be a place for you to play. It might not be affiliated with 30 major league teams, but if you do your thing, there's still scouts everywhere. They'll find you. They're going to have a need. They'll sign you. You'll go play in the minors. Bigger, faster, stronger, smarter is going to determine how far you go in the game.
Amazing. Well, we're running out of time here. It's been an incredible
Can't believe we are.
conversation. One last question is really, what would you love your legacy to be with the game of baseball? And again, can't thank you enough for your time and the amazing passion.
Well, I always ask people, do they think about their legacy, especially high school students when they graduate? And I rarely get asked it. So it's always tough when you're put on the spot. But I think in a really, as matter of fact, simple answer is being remembered of as the agent or the individual in the game who really helped develop the person versus help develop the player. It's all about that individual and the mark you may have left on them as to who they became and who they continue to become. And that lasts so far beyond just playing on the dirt in a uniform. And I hope that's how the game sees me, as somebody that truly gave back and tried to help develop the people, not exclusively the player.
I love that, Mark. And thank you so much for your time. This is unbelievable to be able to hear your passion. And please continue to follow and engage with On the Subject so we have more incredible people in and out of the game of baseball, hockey, football, academia, and share their stories and how we could develop more young people have the best life possible. Thank you for your time
I
today.
appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.